long time ago, when we were young, we met and fell in love and got married. This all happened in about 2.5 years. We were on the fast track. During this 2.5 years, one thing really stood out to us. Barbara and I were not in the church. We're not part of the church yet. But my brother and sister-in-law were. And we just noticed that their marriage was like no other marriage we had ever seen before.
During this time in our new marriage, my grandmother became ill, and we were with her as she lay on her deathbed. And I remember just wondering about life, having questions about death, and not really knowing how to answer those questions for myself. And so Darryl and I decided that we would go and purchase Bibles and try to figure it out on our own. But this just led to a greater sense of confusion and frustration because we just didn't understand what we were reading. But Darryl called his brother Van, and Van and his wife Shamitra helped us. One of the things that they asked us to do was to go and purchase a simpler version of the Bible than the one that we had purchased. And they also told us to start reading the book of John. And suddenly this was so helpful because we were able to begin to understand who Jesus was, and we fell in love with him. And as we were reading during this time, actually 40 days after my grandmother's death, we were informed of my grandfather's death, and this was devastating. And it created a greater sense of urgency and a deeper longing to understand life and to make sense of death.
We had heard these stories before. We had heard the stories in the book of John before many, many times. But this was the first time that there was a purpose behind it. We were confused. We were reaching out. We wanted to understand who Jesus is. And so for the first time in our lives, we opened the Bible to learn who Jesus is. And like Barbara said, we really fell in love with him. But as we were falling in love, we would see him doing amazing things. And that feeling of amazement would be punctuated by the fact that Jesus is God. Every time. Amazing event, love, Jesus is God.
Falling in love with Jesus meant a lot. It touched every part of our lives. Our marriage now had a greater sense of purpose. We had a way of resolving the challenges that we faced in our new marriage. We had a way of learning to love each other in a way that we had never done before. We also learned to love the people around us. Our gratitude for Van and Shamitra and what they were sharing with us just increased exponentially. Our gratitude toward the other people around us who were helping us to understand and learn who Jesus was and giving us hope just increased our gratitude.
And so as this love began, as it really blossomed, one night we studied out the cross. And the cross, after all of this, just meant so much more. Now, we knew about the cross. We knew what the cross represented. But for us, for the first time, this new hero, who we were in love with, who we knew was God, we were reading about his death. And we realized this death was for us. You see, it wasn't in a church setting, someone standing behind a pulpit, or some movie, or some epic about the cross. We were sitting at a dining room table, and people who loved God and loved Jesus were teaching us from the scriptures about the cross. And we realized that if Jesus did this for us out of love, then we want to live for him. So on February 24th, 1994, we were baptized into Christ. And we've been living in this living hope ever since.